Hi, my name is Amber. I am the editor of Africa Defined, and I recently wrote an article entitled that the sea did not just belong to Europeans. I don't know about you, but I know when I am researching anything about Africa, about the African continent, I'm either first met with a whole bunch of sunsets and giraffes and lions and wildebeests and things of that nature, or shown pictures of just people in native garb. And typically poor, and so I'm kind of all about confronting some of these stereotypes and also revealing, to anyone who wants to know what some of the actual stories coming from the African continent are. And one of those is what I'm going to talk about today, and that is maritime explorers that actually were sailing way before a lot of the European explorers that we study about, like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, or Magellan even. So I wanted to talk in particular about one particular African sailor, if you will, is actually the king of Mali back in the early 14th century. And his name was Mansa Abubakari II. And he was really cool because he was this king. And if you know anything about Mali and the kingdom of Mali back in those times, the kingdom was an extremely wealthy kingdom. This is in fact the brother of the future Mansa Musa, who made the Hajj across northern Africa into Mecca and showered northern Africa with so much gold, just completely devalued the cultures the cultures in that area, in that region, completely devalued their currency for years after he made that Hajj. But that Hajj really showed, especially Europeans, how wealthy the kingdom was, and that there was more to offer on the continent of Africa than just possibly labor. So anyway, back to King Abubakari. He was king, but he always loved and always longed to be an explorer. And he loved it so much so that in 1311, he abdicated his throne to his brother, Mansa Musa, and decided to take to the sea. So previously, the thought always was, especially with African cultures along the Western coast, is a lot of them thought that at the end of the Atlantic Ocean, the world just ended. Like there was nothing else there. There wasn't a lot of thought as far as maybe a whole nother continent or even more were on the other side of the Atlantic. So it was kind of daunting, to say the least, but King Abubakari, wanted to know. So once he abdicated, he had a huge fleet. I want to say it was like 200 ships and hundreds of crewmen. And he actually sent a smaller group ahead, and the group never came back. So that just kind of spurred his interest even more, if you will. Some people it might scare away, but he was not deterred. So he took his fleet, and and it is believed by a substantial amount of evidence that he reached Brazil. And the biggest piece of evidence that we have, one of the biggest pieces, is once Christopher Columbus went to the same area in the 1400s, late 1400s. A lot of the natives in Brazil kept talking about a people of dark skin and that had visited, some time before, and they had these spears, and they were tipped. The tips were made of gold. And in fact, Abubakari had brought or had made. That's what they had, were these spears tipped in gold. And anyway, to understand, I guess, the story, and to validate it, Christopher Columbus actually sent some of these spears back to Spain to basically have them evaluated to see, hey, are these really gold? Where did this gold come from? And Spain determined that it was gold that had been gilded, basically, in Western Africa. So it was huge support that Abubakari, or at least his fleet, if they got separated, landed in the Brazilian area. We also have that he was in the Caribbean, or again, part of his fleet was in the Caribbean. Just the time frame. You had natives all over that area, constantly talking about people of dark skin. Some of them even still had their boats that had washed or crashed in some cases on their shores. So it ends up that apparently off of the coast of Cabo Verde, which is an island group, an archipelago off of the coast of, I think, roughly west of Morocco, there is actually a current system in the Atlantic Ocean that apparently once you get into that current, you can't get out of it. And it apparently takes you all the way down to South America. And this was a route that became favored by a lot of African explorers from that western coast of the continent. We also know this because a boat from the fleet of Abubakari did not get into that jet stream, or it's not a jet stream, but in that water ocean stream, if you will. It did not. It actually saw the boats kind of get sucked into it and be taken away, and it scared them. And so one boat actually was able to turn around and make it back to the Kingdom of Mali, and he told everybody what happened. So we kind of have the beginning piece of that story, and we have the end of the story. We don't have the middle. But again, at least we have proof, and substantial proof, that Africans did explore and were out in the ocean even before Christopher Columbus. The other piece of evidence that we have is text that was written by an Arabian historian. I can't think of his name. I think it is Al-Umari. I could be mispronouncing it. But he actually accompanied King, or Mansa Musa, during his Hajj across North Africa. And while he was accompanying and documenting Mansa Musa's Hajj, Mansa Musa actually started talking about Abubakari and his travels and exploration. So we have that side as well, written documentation that apparently is just now recently, within the last 10 years or so, being uncovered and exposed to the public. So that is just one story I wanted to share with you. It is chronicled. If you look up Mansa Abubakari II, it is chronicled. But I just want to kind of get it out there that there were other explorers, not just Europeans. It's actually funny, when I was writing the article, I kept looking up, ancient African explorers, and all that would come up were European explorers. And that was the first thing that kept coming up. And I know a lot of people search for that kind of thing. They're very popular, but at the same time, there were other explorers out there as well. My article goes into a little bit more depth about Abubakari, and also some famous Chinese explorer by the name of Zhang He. Also did extensive exploration between Asia and India. It's even thought, he did go to Eastern Africa, and it's thought that he also went around the Cape of Good Hope. And you're talking about hundreds of years before Europeans did. So just trying to get a piece of that information out there, some of that African information, to try to bridge the gap between the African continent and the African diaspora here in the States or anywhere else. because I know here we just don't get the information. We don't have access to it and don't know it. So, I hope you liked this segment. Each week I'll try to get online and, go through some things that I've researched and come up with. And, um, you know, I always feel like, as long as you're, always learn. It's hard to say that, I don't know when there's a way to get the information out there. So anyway, see you soon.